Hey everyone, it's Irene Lyon here, and welcome to this entire world of nervous system health and healing. And today I want to break down what I often call the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of nervous system regulation. We could say trauma healing at the somatic level, all those things. A little while ago, maybe over 2 years ago now, I did a video where I broke down why learning how to regulate our nervous system as an adult. So this is in a case that, let's just say, we didn't get good, solid self-regulation at the start of our life, which for the case was many of us. If we didn't get that and we're learning it as an adult, it is like learning a second language as an adult. So in other words, after you've learned your mother tongue and you want to learn something new when you're older, it's like that. And so this concept of learning the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of nervous system healing and regulation, I want to break those down today. Be sure to watch that other video that I did a little while ago. We'll link it near this piece. But the first thing I want to outline is that the goal, if there is such thing as a goal with this, is to restore, maintain, and grow more and more nervous system regulation. We could call that self-regulation, but it's being able to have a system, a nervous system, that is working really well, has good flow, good function, because it is influencing, a little crash course here on autonomic nervous system physiology. Our autonomic nervous system governs all of our systems: our cardiovascular system, immune, endocrine, musculoskeletal. It governs our ability to connect with other humans through that parasympathetic nervous system. Also with the environment, it allows us to sleep and repair at night, all the things. So we want to always be, in my opinion at least, building up our nervous system regulation. And if we do not have good, solid nervous system regulation, we want to aim to grow that. Hence learning this second language. And of course, languages have letters and numbers, hence ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Now, if I start as a list, a linear list, and this is not by any means in order of importance, I'm going to start with education. So the reason why, let's just say education is like the A of the ABCs, the reason this is so important is our humanity, we have this higher brain. And because we live in often a very unnatural, inorganic world, and we are organic creatures, we are humans, we are mammals, we are animals, but we also have this higher brain that's a little different. And it likes to understand what is going on. And I'll just give one example to sort of portray, to teach why education is so important. Let's just say, one is starting to feel uncomfortable sensations in their body. And let's just say these uncomfortable sensations come up in a yoga class or any kind of class. And it's because that person is connecting with their body. They're feeling themselves in a way that maybe they haven't felt themselves in a long time, movements, sensations, and all of a sudden they sense this deep, sharp heat coming from, let's just say, their belly. And they know that they don't have food poisoning, and they know this isn't something intestinal, but they're feeling this intense sensation in their belly, somewhere in their viscera. When we have the awareness and the education on board that our nervous system physiology and our visceral organs and all that comes in our system can trap and store old traumatic stress, that is code for fight, flight, freeze, our survival stressors, which are governed by our autonomic nervous system. When we understand the complexity, as I would call the non-dumbed down version of the education, I did another video on this as well, we'll post that near here. When we understand what's going on, that, oh wow, I'm connecting with this part of my physiology, I'm opening it up, I'm bringing space into my organs, I am releasing the tensions that have gripped around my viscera for decades because I was terrified as a kid for whatever reason. I am now in this space where I like the people around me, I trust my teacher, I'm moving and grooving in ways I never have before. I have this sharp pain coming up. If I have the knowledge, the education that this could potentially be an old release, it could be some fascia that is starting to kind of unwind and open up. We see this in soft tissue when folks get soft tissue work, massage work, Rolfing kind of work, fascial work. It can bring up emotions, right? Many of you have maybe heard this, maybe you've experienced this. So when we know that there's this potential for old stored stress, old stored memories, and it doesn't have to be a memory of an event, it can just be a very intense emotion that has no meaning, no memory, it just feels like pure terror. We can be in that moment, connect with it, talk to it, maybe ask for extra support. Maybe we have to pause the practice. Maybe we have to stand up, walk around, have some water, get some fresh air. We can take care of that as opposed to just kind of brushing it under the rug and going, oh, I must have eaten something funny. Of course, that's always possible. But when we have the education on board, we have a little more insight into how to be with our system. And one of the words that I use a lot is capacity. Capacity. And in many ways, the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of nervous system health and healing, they are all in service of growing capacity as an adult so that we can grow our regulation, heal our systems, and if we go that next step, release the stored survival stressors, AKA the stored traumas that have been in our system for maybe a lifetime. So that's the number one, let's say, A, is making sure that we have education on board. Of course, that is what I do here on my channels and within my programs. The second thing I will get into, let's call it the B, would be learning how to connect with our body. So I just gave you the scenario of the yoga class. For someone brand new to connecting with their body, it might seem like a foreign language. It's like hearing a language we've never heard before, and we don't even recognize that, oh, that might be this language or that language. It's completely foreign. And having been in this work for so long, you know when someone has been disconnected from their body, when you ask them, what does it feel like inside? What do you sense internally? And I'll do this with my eyes. They kind of, and this isn't a bad thing, it's just what happens. They'll search in their brain for a word. They will try to think of it. But when we try to think of what we're feeling, it means that we're not in our feeling, in our sensations, in our somatic senses. We would also call this our interoception. So this ability to reconnect with our body and understand it and know that it's even here can be done through, of course, again, through my teachings, lots of self-touch, lots of intention and attention to the body system. It might be through body work where someone is actually laying their hands in different parts of your system, whether it's the skin, the muscle, the bone, gentle, of course, in ways that are safe, where you're waking up those tissues. This is why, again, I'll use the example of yoga or movement practices they can be useful because they're getting you into your body. Now, I say can with emphasis because, again, in my experience, many people go to these classes and they're robotic. They're actually not in their bodies. They're just following the instructions. And yes, they're exerting calories and perhaps they're getting stronger in certain patterns, but it's actually not connecting them to the inside. So again, we've got A, education. I'm just doing this as I go along. B would be connecting with the body. Then I might say C is connecting to the outside world. So this is often something that gets left out in a lot of mind-body practices because it's mind-body. It's not mind, body, and environment. And when we've had a lot of survival stress, a lot of traumatic things happen to us, big, bad, scary things, sometimes an individual will go so internal and they'll feel everything inside that they disconnect from the environment because that environment was where the bad, scary things were happening. If it was a person, a family member, the family system, maybe it was growing up in war, maybe it was a natural disaster, all the things that could be external to us that are of a stress. So part of, again, remember this gaining more regulation is to start to orient. And for those of you who have been around the block with me a few times, this is a very common practice. It's one of the first things we teach in the programs and in my classes is, can one, and I'm doing this with my eyes right now, look away and see the space around us? Can we connect with the outside world? It could be something as simple as a cup of tea that you might be holding, or it could be something bigger like the clouds that you can see over there, or the trees outside, or the book on the shelf, or the colors in the picture, or et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't have to be something specific that is just for orienting. It can be anything outside of you. So again, education, connecting with the body, connecting with the outside world. So let's just call those the A, B, C. If we were to go one, the next 1, 2, 3s, the next thing I will say, and again, remember this isn't in any order of importance necessarily, would be the ability to follow our impulses. And by that, I mean our biological impulses. Some easy examples would be, are you hungry? Can you notice your hunger? Are you full? Do we keep eating when we are full? Is there even a connection with the receptors in our stomach, because they are there, that tell us it's time to stop? Thirst. So when we are thirsty, do we cue into that and do we take liquid in? When we're tired, do we know that we're tired, or do we just keep pushing? Do we rest? Biological things like passing gas, right? Do we hold those things in? Are we feeling shame when we burp or pass gas, obviously through our rectum? Are there these disconnections with what animals in the wild, for instance, and I often use this example when I'm teaching in podcasts, if you ever are at a farm or in a field with a bunch of cows, they are not going to look around and see, is anybody watching me? They're just going to poop anywhere. They're not thinking about it. They're not worried about it. They are following their impulse. Same with infants, of course, right? Infants, they gotta go, they gotta go. It's as we age, as we get more, let's say, conditioned, socialized, we have to do things, there's no bathroom, right? These things pose a bit of an issue, bit of a paradox. We can't just go whenever as humans, but let's just say you're in your home and you know there's a toilet over there, mine's over there. Are you sitting for hours on end, ignoring the pressure in your bladder, ignoring the pressure, say, in your bowels that says you need to go and void your bowels, or you need to empty your bladder? Now, as odd as this might seem, Irene, how is following these impulses helping me regulate my nervous system? Well, it has everything to do with that, because that nervous system governs the production of urine, the production of our feces, the digestion of our food, the absorption of water to hydrate us, the release of water through urine if we don't need that hydration. All of these things, if I give one more example, cold, hot, right? If we're shivering, are we actively feeling that and doing something about it? Or if we're overheating, are we taking off clothes and letting our temperature cool down? Again, these are elements of our autonomic nervous system physiology. So by actually listening to them, and let's just say you're outside and you're shivering and you know you're about to be in your car real soon, of course, notice it. But very often, notice it, I mean, you may not need to put a coat on. You're not going to die if you're just going quickly from house to car and there's some rain and some cold. However, many people, again, I generalize here, don't even notice that temperature change. They don't feel the goosebumps come up on their skin. They might not notice that they're red and perspiring because they're hot. And this is often a sign of a disconnection from the system. Now, the other thing is when we are living in survival stress and a lot of what we would call functional freeze. Did another video on this a little while ago. Again, we'll post that near here. But when we're in something like functional freeze, where we are functioning, but we're kind of disconnected, we don't pick up the cues. And our body might even stop giving us cues. And it might even start not doing the things that it's supposed to maintain that internal homeostasis. So again, cannot stress enough this ability for us to start to listen to these biological impulses, be with them, literally feed them if need be, and to just listen to this system. So I think that was the one of the 1, 2, 3. If I go to another element that we might want to work with to, again, build this capacity, which is again in service of growing more nervous system regulation, one other thing might be feeling and sensing how we engage with humans, other people. Now, this is a little more advanced in that for some of us, humans were the source of all of our pain and trauma and dysregulation, and that might be accurate. However, how can we start to have a little connection with other humans, even if it is just smiling to someone when you are walking outside in the park? Now, of course, it's not about forcing another person to smile to you or to nod, but it might just be listening and sensing, is this person interested in engaging with a smile or a good morning? You'd be surprised how many folks in the morning when you're outside walking actually enjoy that acknowledgement of, hey, good morning, that kind of thing. I find that more older people are more interested in that than the younger folk that are in their phones and just not engaged, but that's another story for another day. Even if you are, say, at the grocery store, most of us have to go and buy food, checkout, when the cashier is there, something as simple as saying, hi, how are you? Because they usually will ask, how are you doing? You might answer, and then you might pause with deliberate intention, not autopilot. Pause, how are you? How are you today? Is it busy here? Talk about the weather. I know that might seem really kind of basic and plain, but that is a way to practice sparking up a little bit of our social engagement system. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this as the number 2 of the 1, 2, 3, when we are young, if we didn't have good, what's called co-regulation with our caregivers, because they themselves were maybe not self-regulated or did not have any clue what to do with us, we may not have gotten the right cues, the social cues. And it might even be confusing to us as adults when we didn't get that, how to engage with people. And that's okay. The cool thing is we can grow this regulation back. We grow that capacity of social engagement back by these little tiny experiments throughout the day where we're testing out in a fairly benign, safe space. This isn't about dating or going to the bar and picking up anyone. It's not about that. It's about daily interactions where there are other humans where you might be able to just nod, smile, in elevators, something as simple, again, sounds crazy. It's pretty cold out there. Gosh, it's so hot. That weather, that is a good way to break the ice and talk to someone who you don't know, but to practice that social engagement interaction. Now, the reason why this is important, part of our nervous system, so there's a little bit of education here, that part of our nervous system that governs our heart, that governs our capacity to self-regulate and to come down, it is this social engagement nervous system. The fancy word is the ventral vagal portion of the parasympathetic nervous system. This is where that vagus nerve comes in. And that ventral portion is our social engagement muscle, so to speak. It allows us to connect with others and also other mammals like our furry friends, dogs and cats. By having that spark up, it actually directly relates to our heart pacemaker, and it can bring the system down. Now, of course, this is where here's a little complexity. If those connections when we were young were not soothing, it might be that our system is wired a little upside down in that when we see other people, our heart goes up. But I'm here to say, as humans, as mammals, we are meant to be with other people, not huge droves of people, but some people, close community connection. It doesn't have to be, again, lots. It could be one person, one partner, one friend. But one of the ways we start to reverse that not wanting to be with folk is to start to experiment and kind of, in a healthy, safe way, pushing ourselves to engaging little bits with little tiny elements of experimentation with people who are just in the outside world. So experiment with that. The final thing I will bring in, so we've gone A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Let's make 3 resourcing. So this one can sometimes be quite confusing for some. And I know that because when we teach this in my longer program, Smart Body, Smart Mind, it's a bit of a conundrum. And it's okay, because for many of us, we have resources that are positive that we know we go to, but we don't think of them as resources. So a resource is something on the outside of us, like that hot cup of tea that I think I just mentioned, a warm bath, a fuzzy blanket. It could be nature, it could be a pet, it could be a book, it could be music, it could be anything that we use, that we have, that brings our system into more self-regulation. Now, one of the things that sometimes can be a little confusing is, well, there are things that we might have in our environment that are resources, but they're not positive, like abusing, let's say, drugs and alcohol, nicotine, all the things that we might get addicted to, even things like exercise, for example, can be a resource, but it can also be not good for us if we overly do it, if we are addicted to it to the point where it is driving us to injure ourselves or basically harm our bodies. So hopefully that makes sense. But we want to have resources that are helpful and healthy, that we can go to, that we can connect with, so that we can help soothe our bodies, soothe our nervous systems. I'll give you an example of something that maybe will connect this with early life. So a lot of kids, when they're young, might have a teddy bear or a blanket. People will call them blankies, or their blanket, their favorite toy. And kids will go everywhere with that thing. Now, the reason why that is good at a young age is it's teaching that little one to have connection with something that isn't mom or dad, but is an object that they feel connected to, so they can feel safe and self-regulate, right? And that is exactly what a resource is as an adult. Now, when we have these resources around us, the key is going back to some of the ABCs that I was talking about. So when that resource is with you, for example, can you sense your body better? Is it easier to sense what's going on inside? When you're with that resource, can you connect with the environment? When you're with that resource, are you better able to sense your impulses? And so by actually making that connection, stitching together, got this resource, maybe it's a cup of tea. As I hold this cup of tea, as I smell the scent of the peppermint or whatever it might be, I can sense my body soothing. And then in that moment, that is where we need to be inside and sense how our physiology might be changing with that. The more and more we can connect with that, the more we're building the language of capacity. We're growing capacity, we're growing regulation. If we take this a step further, when one gets really good at listening to, oh, when I have that cup of tea, I can sense myself, I can feel myself, I can actually also look out onto the porch deck or out to the clouds with this tea. It's creating this loop of connection with self and the environment and the resource. Over time, as we start to pay attention to this, one can then be out in the world and they might not need that cup of tea to connect. They just can connect because they've been practicing that connection with themselves with these resources. So eventually, if we take this one step further here, eventually we begin to internally resource without needing necessarily that cup of tea. Now, there's nothing wrong with a cup of tea, a favorite book, some music, a person, an animal, a stuffed animal, a blanket, a warm fuzzy sweater, nothing wrong with that. And I should say, can you start to sense the internal when you're with that, so that you start to create this nervous system vocabulary of, I just sensed my belly soften. I just sensed my heart rate go down. As I brought this around me or have this resource, I actually sensed myself sink deeper into my feet and feel the ground. And so this, my friends, is we're having, if I go back, ABC 1, 2, 3 to A, education, by understanding what I'm saying here and understanding how, as adults, we need to sort of restructure and lay these foundations down. By understanding that, it doesn't seem crazy to take a pause, an extra pause, when you have that warm cup of tea or that blanket, and really bask, if you will, in the sensory experience, in the experience with the outside world. And hey, maybe you are with someone, or maybe you're just at the coffee shop or the tea shop with this warm drink, and you're connecting with self, you're listening to the chatter around you, and maybe someone next to you is by themselves and you catch their eye and you just smile, or you say, this tastes really good, how's your tea, or whatever, or oh, that cookie looks good. And then you're doing the social engagement thing that I mentioned a second ago. So this has been a little longer, a little more specific to a few elements of what I would call within my work, and my colleagues would call building capacity. So the education, the connecting to self, the environment, the following the impulses, the sparking up this social engagement, and then the resources, all of them combine, I'm going to use another analogy now, into a bit of a soup, into this language of the nervous system and the somatic senses and our connection with the environment. And then if I bring this one step more, when we are infants, when we are little toddlers, the desire of that little early human is to have these things happen naturally, spontaneously from their caregivers. Now, of course, not all of us get that, and so we don't learn good self-regulation through the co-regulation with our primary caregivers. We don't learn to feel our body in a positive way. We don't learn how to orient to the outside world because nobody's engaging with us, right? We lose connection with our impulses because our feeding schedule is totally not based on our biology. It's based on the work schedule of our parents, or our sleep schedule has been trained so that we're not falling asleep and waking up on our natural rhythm. And so if we didn't get that organic, natural connection with caregiver who is regulated and teaching us to be with the world as adults, we want to learn it. At least that's what my students do. They are learning the process of bringing more self-regulation into their nervous system, into their somatic self, via these practices, these ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. This is the starting point of healing trauma. You noticed I hardly use the word trauma in this. From my experience, as we build this language of self-regulation and capacity, the old traumas, the survival stresses, they actually start to come out and bubble out naturally. And then when they do, because we've done so much groundwork, so much ABC and 1, 2, 3 work, when they do come up, they don't trigger us. They don't reactivate us. They don't re-traumatize us, which happens all too often. We feel it, we sense it, we go, oh, to go back to that yoga example, this is that thing. This is that memory. This is that movement. This is that desire to scream, to protect, to run, all the things. We see them, we feel them, and we're not alarmed by them. We actually invite them because this is exactly what we signed up for, to get this stuff out of our system via the building of capacity and increasing our self-regulation by learning the language of our nervous system. So this has been a longer one. Hope this makes sense. I hope this has made a few of the pieces come together. Of course, if you have any questions, if you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube, post them below. My team will get to those. And until next time, keep practicing these ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And if you want more information and more education, just visit my site, my name, irenelein.com, and you will find a lot of goodies there to continue this practice of nervous system regulation and growing your capacity. Bye for now.